Hi everyone, this is Duke with a video on attaching pins to your soldering board. So part of the soldering assignment has you put some pins into the board and solder them in. And I wanted to show how to do that because it wasn't included in the other videos. So I have some pins here on these big strips. These are common to get them in this kind of format. Let me zoom in a little bit there. So a bunch of these pins, and these are meant to be installed in something. Then you can plug something else into the pins, like a servo for your aileron or an ESC plug to get signals for the motor, whatever it is. They can be common. You can see these types of pins in receivers and flight controllers, drone stuff, right? So what I want to do today was show you how to put the pins in and show you some kind of gotchas as well, since I was working on this earlier and messed this one up a little bit. I was actually making the video and I messed this one up during the video. So this is a retake, take two, show you some gotchas that I experienced as well as just other ones I'm aware of. Okay. So in the assignment we have two areas here and here where the pins will actually fit. So that's why it's important in the assignment to pay attention and not tin all the pads on the board at the start. Don't tin these specific areas that are shown in the assignment to not tin so we can install the pins. Okay, you can do a pair of or a group of 3 pins or a group of, I just happen to have a group of 4 pins here. Doesn't really matter, but 3 or 4 pins will fit with the spacing that we have. Zoom in here. The spacing that we have on these holes. So we have 3 groups of circle pads, both on this side and the other side of the board. Okay, and the pins are meant to be installed in the middle group that has the bigger holes in the circle. And so if you had 4 of them, you go in the first 4 right here, and they will drop in like so. If you had, sorry, I had to cough there, excuse me. If you have 3 of them, it'll also fit just the first 3 holes. Beyond that, the spacing starts to increase between the holes and they don't really match up anymore with the pins we want to use. So that's why you need to reserve those 2 areas for your sets of pins. So the pins will drop in like this and they'll extend through the board a little bit. Oops. Extend through the board a little bit on the back side, so you can kind of see that there, maybe at that angle. So a little bit of pin sticking out the bottom. Okay, this is where we solder them on the shorter side here, and this taller side here will be where you would plug stuff in, like in a servo or an ESC or something like that to move your aileron or spin your motor or whatever it is. The thing to be aware of with the pins is when you are soldering them, you want to make sure you don't get them, tilted too much to one side. Oops. So kind of off kilter like that, or maybe you have one side installed farther than the other, off kilter like that. Okay, you want them to all be flush and even, and actually it's hard to get it messed up if you. What am I trying to say? Sorry. It's hard to make a mistake if you just do 1 pin at a time and you double check the orientation. So if you just plug the pins in like this and say, okay, yeah, go for it, do all 4 of them, you might not know until you turn it back over that the pins are all off kilter like this. And once you've done all 4 of them, it's hard to redo it because you can't really heat up all 4 of those pads at the same time with a normal soldering iron. But if you do just 1 pin and then check it, you can make any corrections you need to by reheating and moving things to be in the right position before you do the rest of the pins. Once you do more than 1 pin, basically you're locked in because these pins are all connected, of course, with the plastic there. Okay, so I recommend 1 at a time. And I'm actually noticing now with the 4 pins, it's a little bit stiffer than it was with the 3 pins I did earlier. So I might even recommend doing 4 if you want. It will actually hold it better for you, won't be so prone to wobbling or tilting. Of course, if you're doing a actual flight control or something like that, you'll probably have groups of 3 pins, not 4. But you might have your own experience there with whatever flight control you're working with. So once I've installed the 4 pins here, I can then take some blue tack or something like that to kind of stick things down. And we can go ahead and kind of insert this into the blue tack. It's going to make a little bit of a mess, but that's okay. We'll do the other corner too so the board doesn't move on me. We'll get our solder iron out. Okay, make sure it's heated up to a good temperature. We have our solder. Once our iron is heated up, we can tin the iron. Now what we'll do is we'll just go at one of these pins kind of from the side. So make sure my iron's tinned. I'm going to heat a little bit here and then add some solder and try to get a nice kind of Hershey's Kiss um, onto the pin, if that makes sense. So a little bit more solder there. Make sure it cools together, heats together and cools together. And there we have our first one. So let's take a look. Get out of the blue tack here. The pin will get pretty hot, so it will kind of melt the blue tack sometimes. That looks pretty good actually. So if we look at it this way, it's not tilted one side or the other. This way it's fairly flush as well, so that's looking good. And our pins didn't move on us. What I had happen on the other side to me when I was filming the video earlier, trying to film the video, was I must have heated it too long or something, and the pins pushed back. You can see these pins are quite a bit longer here, okay, on the back side than these ones are. These are barely poking through, and these ones are poking through quite a bit, which is a problem because that means this side is shorter, which may mean it's not long enough to contact whatever you plug into. So I'll be fixing this, but for now, just do it this way, okay? And once we have one pin tinned up and soldered there, you can kind of see, try to see if we can get this a little bit closer. Kind of see that Hershey's Kiss flowing up from the solder pad to envelop the pin. So it's kind of that, I guess again Hershey's Kiss shape. That helps to see it that way a little bit. Okay. Doesn't have to be completely enveloped. Like you can see the top of the pin, that's okay. But you shouldn't be able to see any of the solder pad. And it should be kind of continuous all around the pin, not just on one side. So once one is done, we can do the other remaining pins, and we don't have to put the blue tack in that area anymore. So I'll put on the other corners to not get this corner sticky at all. And we will kind of pop this down and finish the rest of the pins. So let's get our iron tinned up again. More solder. Okay, and we'll go through and tin the other pins, or solder the other pins, I should say, by basically tinning the pad with the pin installed. Make sure you get enough solder for heat transfer. That really helps. Also adding some flux to these pads or their flux pen ahead of time can really help as well. And sometimes the pins are just a little bit pesky. You might want to start one and come back to it as you go along. Do multiple pins. The board will warm up, which will help in general for this kind of operation. I got too much solder on that one, I think. And I bridged a couple. Look, there we go. That's what you don't want to do. Let's debridge that real quick. Okay, kind of got that off there. I'll have to clean that up in a minute, but we'll just get that extra solder off and kind of tin to these pads. Unfortunately, messing up in the demonstration video is something I'm all too familiar with. But there we go. We got those pads sorted out there with the pins. It looks like we have a nice Hershey's Kiss on each pad. Okay. And if you get a little bit extra like I did there, we'll look at that in just a second. You can also trim that off with some flush cutters. Ideally, you wouldn't get extra, but it happens to everybody, I guess. Okay, so if we look here, let's see if we can see. So I got definitely a little excess solder in that third pin. The second and fourth pins look pretty good. You can see the Hershey's Kiss kind of coming up there, meeting the pin. You can still see the pin. And if we flip it over here, we can see that they're still aligned in both directions. They didn't like sink down too much. They do say got a little bit excess heat on this pin here, so it's kind of at a little bit of an angle. It's not exactly straight. These pins can definitely move. All that's holding them in place is this plastic, which heats up pretty fast. So I probably shouldn't have gone over these more than once. Kind of I got too much of a perfectionist going on there. And that extra heat allowed that pin to slide a little bit. Though it's of course possible to bend the pin back into place so it can still plug into things and be okay in that way, if that makes sense. Okay. So try to do those relatively quickly and not spend too much time on each pin, each pad. Okay. And if you make a mistake like me, it's a practice board. It's okay. That's what practice boards are for. And we can usually fix most of our mistakes by tinning things around there, moving some solder around, maybe getting excess solder off with some cutters or retinning it like that. Looks a little bit better now. And now we have our 4 pins attached on this side. Okay, zoom out a little bit. And 3 attached on this side. So if you do happen to mess up like I did on this side, okay, with the pins going too far through for some reason, you heated them too long, what you can try to do is heat up the back side a little bit and press it with the iron to try to push the pin back through the plastic. You just can't push too hard, or else you push it all the way through and you have the opposite problem again. Let's see if we can do one on camera here a little bit. I'll try to kind of show you what I'm doing. Okay, so I'm going to heat up this pin, and then I can push it through a little bit as long as it gets hot enough and kind of get the height adjusted better. Okay, so there's one of them. You can see now it's higher than the others. So I would do that with each pin, just carefully. I'll have a bunch of excess solder, or else we'll end up bridging something here. Just a little bit of solder for heat transfer. We'll go through and get these other two pins, on camera. See if we can sort those ones out. So mistakes can be fixed. Don't despair. And you can often find a solution to what you need to do. So get this one to scoot down a little bit. There we go. Not too bad. There's two of them roughly the same height now. I should adjust the third one. You get the idea there. And so when you're doing this assignment, hopefully this helps. Attach your pins on. Everything else on the board will be tinned just on the pads, but attaching these pins is part of the assignment. So let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.